decías que tu presencia sea el anhelo de mi vida.
The story about Dennis the Menace. And Dennis was preparing for First Communion. And the teacher was helping the children understand the wonderful works of God. And the teacher was explaining how the universe, the stars, the planets were all created by God. And how the sun is the center, and how the planets go about it. This is God's wisdom, this is God's love for humankind. And the catechist added, the sun is the center, the moon receives the light from the sun. So after a whole explanation of God's goodness and God's wisdom, the teacher asked, now who can tell me what's more important, the sun or the moon? And sure enough, Dennis wants to answer. Okay, Dennis, will you tell the class what's more important? And Dennis gets up and says, teacher, what's more important is the moon. The teacher says, Dennis, I just explained that the moon receives the light from the sun. Why do you say the moon is more important? And then he says, teacher, the moon is more important because it gives us light at night when we need it the most. What's important, my friends, is so relative. And as we go through the stages in our lives, we discover, yes, each different stage of life brings us to appreciate, even to value, to make a judgment about what's important. What's interesting, as we go through the liturgical year, Mother Church offers us a suggested important thing that can nurture our spiritual life. Now is the acceptable time. Now is the time of salvation. We come to hear these salutary days of Lent. What's important these days is that we come to terms with our baptismal vocation. We have been immersed in the life of Christ. We have been called forth from darkness into light, as we heard last Sunday. Our baptismal vocation is the focus of what's important at this juncture in our Lenten journey. Notice, however, that in today's reading, both from Ezekiel chapter 47 and from John chapter 5, both readings have to do with saving water. And Ezekiel wades into the river flowing from the temple, first to his ankles, then to his knees, then to his waist, then a rush of water that he could not wade. Our baptismal vocation is something that we grow into. And sometimes we cannot handle it because it's too demanding, because we cannot respond adequately. And yet, the healing water is portrayed in a more effective way in the pool of Bethesda. And there's a man there 38 years lying on a mat, hoping and anxiously waiting for healing. Do you want to get well? Jesus asked. Well, of course. But Jesus wants to know, do you want to get well? Jesus never works against one's will. The healing waters of baptism is about taking into account what have we done with an awareness of God's love and God's presence in our life. Do you want to get well? It has to do with what cripples life. The man laying 38 years on a mat had no recourse except being able to get up and walk into the pool. But Jesus made him well. A few years back, I was handling my own woundedness, my own inner life, and I attended a workshop on inner healing. And I was shaken into an awareness of how my woundedness goes back all the way to my infancy. And the presenter gave us an analogy that I should never forget. It was the analogy of an elephant. And the presenter said, look at a grown-up, huge animal. And there the animal stands shackled to a stake and a chain. And you see them going side to side. And they think that they cannot get free from the chain of the stake. The presenter said, that analogy is about your life. When that elephant was a baby elephant, early on, he was tied to a chain and a stake. That's the way humans control the animal. And so that animal, as big as he is now, grew up believing that he could not be free. So when he was a baby elephant, he tried to pull the leg off the stake, and he couldn't do it. And now he's a big animal, and he cannot do it because he was shackled for life. My friends, our baptismal vocation is about persuading us that Jesus the Lord can help us pull the stake away. But we have to acknowledge that we are shackled. We have to question what are the things in our lives that kind of hinder us from freedom. God does not push anyone into freedom. God does not force it. God does not force anyone into healing. We have to do that. So my friends, what's important? It's important that we become aware of our shackles, of those things that are hindering us from responding fully to God's love and God's grace.
Tu presencia sea el anhelo de mi vida. Yo quiero hacer tu voluntad, Señor, yo te quiero agradar y quiero darte